Good morning, afternoon, and evening, whenever you're watching this, everyone. Welcome to week 5 of interpreting scripture. And we got a lot to go over this week because you guys have 3 assignments. Not all 3 of them are due this week, but you need to start all 3 of them this week. And it'll take some explaining. So, as per usual, your reading is there. The D.A. Carson reading you click on that right there. You're going to use this video as a help to use a Bible concordance for one of your assignments this week. So let's start talking about the assignments 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. 5.1, this will be due not at the end of this week, but the end of next week. And this will be another group assignment. I want to say clearly again, those of you in the groups, there's still a few of you. The vast majority of you are working together, and I haven't gotten complaints, but there are still several of you who are not helping your groups out and communicating with them, or if you are, you're like not touching base with them until like a day or two before the assignment's due. That is not cool. You will be marked down, and it's not going to be good for your grade at all because there are multiple group assignments in this course. You have to be able to work together. Group assignments and group work is a key demonstration of your ability to do ministry, because guess what? It's very relational no matter what part of ministry you're in. So you need to be able to do work or group work and to work well with people. And it's selfish, no matter how busy you are, to at least not update them and tell them what's going on and work with them closely. So please do that and touch base with each other early and often before the assignment is due. Okay, enough of that. If you have any questions, or if you haven't told me about just a difficult time getting a hold of people and working with others in your group, you need to do that ASAP. Okay. Assignment 5.1, the literary context assignment. We're going to be looking at Romans 12, 1-3. Glorious piece of scripture here, right? I'll even open up Romans 12 really quick to remind you. It's one of my, I don't want Romans 1, I want Romans 12. Oh, come on now. If you open up Romans there, which I'm sure 0 of you are doing as you're watching this, I don't know, Bible Gateway, that's the first thing that popped up. NIV, fine, that's okay. Okay, 12, 1-3, right? Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. So this is a phenomenal piece of scripture, as is all of Romans, but we often quote verses like this. I feel like this one a ton. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Or we just cut it off. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. That's like as if that is like a message in and of itself. Do not conform. We Christians are nonconformists. We're not of the world. Don't conform to the world. Well, oftentimes we say that, and the context is what? Anything. It could be a homeschool motto. It could be your church's motto of why we don't do something, or just a bad report of news. Well, we don't conform to the pattern of this world. All sorts of things, right? Well, to be able to apply it in any of those contexts, you've got to first understand the original context. So that's what this assignment is getting at, and not just that verse, but taking a short passage like that, and you're going to conduct a thorough literary study of the entire book of Romans. Ouch! The way we're going to make that even close to feasible is that it's essentially going to be very brief tidbits for you to simply demonstrate your understanding of the rest of Romans, of what's going on, and the real study itself is just those 3 verses. So you're gonna put 12:1-3 in the context of a literary flow, in terms of the chapter, the book, and the theological message of the New Testament. So if you were going to briefly describe to someone, so briefly tell me what 12:1-3 means, and what does it mean in light of what's happening in that chapter 12 in Romans, what's happening in the book of Romans, and what's the theological message of the New Testament that applies to. Okay, so this will be in similar fashion to assignment 2, 3, 1, and 4. It's going to be conducted in the group. You are allowed to divide up pieces of the assignment with your group. So recall that some of the assignments we're giving you, we're not letting you divide them up in the sense of everyone has to do the whole thing and interact on it and kind of check and balance each other. This one, you literally can say, Sally, you do this part, Billy, you do this part, and so on, right? Okay, so each student must read through and edit the final product, meaning that you're giving your stamp of approval. So you can't hide behind, well, I never saw what Billy turned in. I was only doing Sally's part. You have to actually be responsible. If Billy or Sally didn't do their part or needs more work, it's your responsibility to point that out to them and take on the responsibility of the group's work. Okay, so see assignment 3.1, that'll be back in week 3, for a list of prospective online tools to help you to coordinate this assignment. So whether you're using Google Docs or whatever, I still think that's the best one that I've seen that's easiest for you. And you'll literally take this literary context worksheet. This is okay, let me just make sure you understand this. You're going to lean heavily on the readings in week 5, specifically in GGW chapter 8. So GGW chapter 8, the literary context, page 149 to 162. The word studies will be a part of it, but not this assignment as much as primarily chapter 8. So to do this assignment, the literary context worksheet. Oops, I have it open twice, and there's a reason for that, but we'll go over in a second. So using this worksheet goes on for several pages with several steps, as you can see. You're going to complete a literary study of the structure and message of Romans. This exercise will require you to summarize the entire book of Romans. Don't be dismayed, it's not that hard. First, and that's kind of part of the point of this exercise, is if you were going to sit down and do a little study on Romans for your discipleship group, or anything for that matter, or teaching, how often would you be like, okay, well, I better outline the entire book of Romans or summarize it? I'm like, no, that seems kind of overwhelming, right? But it doesn't have to be. In many ways, if you're going to do a one-off teaching or a couple teachings on a section of a book like Romans, you do want to make sure that you're familiar with the overall flow of the book and what's going on in the whole book. And you can do that rather quickly. You'll see how to do that here. So the point is that after completing, first you're going to write summaries of literary subsections, then main sections, then section groupings, and eventually the entire book. Whee! After completing this assignment, you will understand how the book fits together as a whole, and how 12:1, this says 1-2. I know it had 1-3 in there. The whole point is that little section, how it fits into the larger whole. The assignment will progress through 4 steps. Begin with step 1 below, but note the columns titled section and passage toward the left side. In steps 2 and 3, you will provide summaries of the summaries in step 1. In step 4, you will summarize the entire book in 1 sentence, and each box in the right column provide a maximum 1-sentence summary of the section of Romans specified in the left column. Okay, so let's give examples of that. And do not use any outside Bible study tools for this assignment. That's very important, because we're wanting this to be your own observations. There's things that you can you use study tools for good reasons, and then there's things where you need to leave the study tools out because you actually need to make the observations yourself to allow the Spirit of God and your own spirit to connect on the Word, and you're not just regurgitating what you have found others to have said about it. And you're not going to memorize it. You're not going to have it in you in the same way. So again, here's step 1. Step 2 is down there. So in step 1, you see, you're gonna put things in groupings. We give you the passages, and we show you even like the sections, right? So we're basically saying Here's chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all 16 chapters of Romans, right? And we're saying there is grouping. So there's like a section, well, the first grouping is basically chapters 1 to 3.5, right? Then the second grouping is chapter 3.5 to 8, and so forth, right? And then within that first grouping, there's a couple sections within that, and that won't make sense yet but that doesn't matter. The point is that you're able to kind of see what we're doing and where we're going with all this, and we're gonna your first step is essentially to provide a one sentence summary of each of these passages, right? So begin with step 1. But note the columns titled section and passage, right? You're noting there's a section and passage toward the left side. And so the point is you're literally going through every single passage. You'll see 12:1 to 3 isn't a passage we're breaking down. It's a part of a larger section. So these are relatively large sections of Scripture. Overall, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So again, if you're dividing this in your group and you've got 4 people, some of you have 5 people, I think, if you had 4 people, you'd only have to do 5 verses. So you can say, I'll do the first 5, you do the next 5, and so forth. And you're reading that passage, giving a one sentence summary of that passage. Do not use outside study tools. Do not use your a Bible. If you've got a Bible, with what we call it, study Bible. Study Bibles will give you oftentimes sentence summaries or whatever, but don't read what they're saying. You're doing it on your own, providing one sentence summaries. Then in steps 2 and 3, you're going to provide summaries of the summaries in step 1. So in other words, in step 2, you're taking these sections here, right? You're getting small, less small, least small, or you're going from the non-biggest to the biggest. You're kind of inward to outward, right? So when it's step 2 are the sections, these pieces. So section 1 is a little bit misleading. I wish it wasn't like this, but it is. So section 1 is just this. So in other words, your passage sentence summary and your section sentence summary on the first one happens to be the same thing. But obviously, section 2 combines these 3 one-sentence summaries. So you are therefore then summarizing in one sentence what these 3 section sentence summaries are. And then in this section, these 3 sentence summaries. In this one, it's 4 sentence summaries you're putting into section 4. Those 3, those 4, and those 2 into, actually section 7 and 8 are 1. So in other words, you basically get to repeat those 2 for 7 and 8. I don't know how you'd have a one sentence summary there, and then section 7 all of a sudden it's a different one sentence summary. So it's the same thing, right? In other words, that is a small section, that it's a small passage, but it is kind of a section of Scripture. If you feel like you want to change, in other words, if you see, okay, section 7 is 15, 14 to 33. If you feel like, okay, when you do a one sentence summary on that passage, but then you put it into how does that one passage relate to more of a section summary, and you restate it a little different, that's okay. But I'm also okay if you literally just say the same thing because it's the same passage when there's not more than one. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Then in step 3, same routine, but you're doing the groupings. So you're going all the way up and looking at this grouping. So now you're really going off of these 2 sections. When you combine these 2 sections, what is that group saying? And what is that group saying to that, and that group to that? What you have in group 3 and 4 is just one section. So I get the fact that is a little it's kind of restating